Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. Normally we would be checking out a theme video today to go along with our new singers, but because we're doing the compare and contrast, I figured it would be kind of awkward if we listened to the older singer today and then waited to listen to the newer singer on Monday. So I just took Monday's special selection, slotting it into today, and then Monday we'll just check out both songs from the same band back to back. So, special selection time. This is where one of you tell me what I need to check out. We got a request from Dimoha, KIL MOON, Duk Koo Kim, slowcore. Alright, slowcore. That's slow. Alright, we have a 14.5-minute song here, but it is slowcore, so probably just a couple of ideas stretched out to a long time. At least that's what I'm expecting from it. I'll be very surprised if it's 14 minutes of lots of different ideas. Regardless, this comes off of the 2003 Ghost of the Great Highway album from KIL MOON. Let's dive into it and see what they're bringing to the table today. A somber vibe, mostly. Light, easy sounds. Nice action on the snare, good amount of fuzz to that. Trying to place the vocals right here. It's just sort of neutral. It doesn't carry some of that slightly melancholy vibe of the chords. Hanging on to that. Have a drone in the background, the white noise of the guitar. There's a lack of energy in the vocal delivery. It has push. It's supported well. But like that held out note right there, it just sort of is. It's very loosely supported in that the pitch kind of wavers a little bit. The movement between pitches is very fluid too. Just kind of bordering on slurring the notes together, definitely going for a legato delivery. Apathy comes to mind, but I don't really think it's apathetic. There's still emotion behind it. It's just low energy. Which of course matches the lower energy of the song too. It's a perfect combination with the atmosphere. Another section just holding on to this tension. Series of offbeat accents. Interesting decision. The bells are a nice addition. Yeah, and more offbeat accents there too. Really? They're going for a bit of levity in this section that really wasn't previous elsewhere. Even the lightness of this vocal delivery has some levity to it. Both in the pitch, of course, which is higher, but in the thinner falsetto sound too. What is that? Being how sharp of a tone it is, I'm thinking dulcimer, but it doesn't quite... Something about the timbre is not matching that. Dude, this is beautiful because we still have this slightly melancholic foundation. It's just all these parts coming up above it are sparkling, they're twinkling, whether it's the falsetto or the bells or this plucked string. It's all very bright and vibrant against that, like stars on top of just, you know, a desert, a sort of an empty landscape. Building the harmony that way. Is that getting longer too? Is it just going to become the riff to go along with everything else eventually? Lots of snare here. Okay. Taking a lot of the same timbres and energy of most of the foundation of this song and turning it into something beautiful. It still has a lot of warmth to it. It's still rooted in a way that the twinkling parts weren't in that last section, but finds a brighter voice through that grounded tone. Ambition is sort of what I'm getting out of this. Or maybe just a drive to be better. Not necessarily better in like a superiority way, but making tomorrow brighter than today was. That kind of vibe. Some interesting temporal decisions in here as well. For a second I thought that was trumpet. So 2 guitars and falsetto vocals. I think there's 2 vocal tracks there. pretty cool that we have a combination of 3 and 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives us a 3 against 2 hemiola. For every 2 beats of the 4, we have 3 beats of the 3. That's certainly an abrupt ending right there. Normally when songs just end, it's still typically at the end of a riff. The band just chooses not to restart the riff, restart the pattern, the phrase. This just stops in the middle of an idea, a musical idea. This guitar lick just in the middle of it, about 65, 70% through it, it just doesn't continue. It doesn't finish up, which is wild because we have heard this melody. I don't know, it had to have been hundreds of times by now. We're so accustomed to it. We're so used to it. We get it. It's baked into your mind by this point in the song that when it just stops, it draws a lot of attention to that. Again, if they had waited for the idea to come to the end of it, it wouldn't have felt out of place. It stops in the middle, though. While everything else around it is fading out, too. That's interesting. Most other instruments find finality, but the guitar and the bells at the end don't. They're interrupted in the middle of a phrase. Hmm. Alright. This is a long song, full of a couple of ideas that get expanded upon over time. Honestly, I could probably break this up into 3 distinct sections. The verse chorus that takes us through the first 5 or so, 6 minutes of the track. The extended build up bridge that's from like 5 or 6 to, I don't know, 11 minutes maybe, and then the final 3 minutes of the song, which gives us a variation on a lot of the ideas presented in the first 2/3 of the track. There's a lot more movement than I expected in this track, but generally speaking, like I said, I break it up into 3 main ideas, 3 parts, 14 minutes long. We spend a lot of time within these parts, for better or worse. I think based on what the song is doing, artistically, it's a really strong decision to work with this. The entire concept here seems to be variations on a theme, presenting an emotional atmosphere and then building all sorts of ideas within it. It's showcasing a bit of light variety within a singular concept. I think that's a pretty cool thing to work on. Just coming at it from like a purely technical standpoint, limitation is one of the coolest ways to start exploring creativity. And you're saying, hey, I'm working within this 4 chord progression. I'm working within the production of these guitars and this bass and the drums and these vocals. This is the sound of the song. What can I do with that? I doubt he set out to make 14 and a half minutes. It's just like, that's how long I need to figure things out. No, it's probably like you keep growing until you've run out of ideas and then you wrap it up. But, you know, the idea here is he's like, I want to build a long song. Here's the framework of it. What can I do within that to keep it interesting over a long time? And, yeah, I mean, that's, you can definitely come to some cool conclusions out of that. I also think that if you're absolutely enjoying the atmosphere here. The slight variation keeps you interested throughout, and the atmosphere is engaging to you from start to finish, hopefully. For me, though, as much as I love my contrast, I did find a couple of sections in here to sort of just exist for some time. I didn't really see much of a purpose to them other than to be. And a couple of places where I thought the song was just treading water. Not sinking, the song's not falling apart, but not really going anywhere either. Again, just sort of existing, which is fine if you're in that mindset. I just, I rarely am. And I quite enjoyed different parts of this track than the ones that stagnated a little bit. So, like I said, it's hyper fixated on one thing for better or worse. But I want to focus on the better. This wasn't my cup of tea necessarily. I didn't dislike it, but I would probably not seek it out again. But there's still a lot of great things to talk about in here. First of all, the atmosphere itself. What is going on here? We have some really fuzzy guitars that have the original timbre cutting through as well. This isn't super fuzzy in the world of like shoegaze, but it isn't super clean and clean electric guitar either. I think there's also some layering in here of electric guitars with layers of distortion and compression, and maybe even clean electrics paired with them in order to get that crisp original sound while still having some of this extra production around it. Maybe it's also an electric acoustic, and we're pairing up both signals. That's another way to go about doing it. Regardless, there are parts in here that feel clean and parts that don't, and they come together. They come together in a way that I'm not entirely sure how they came to that sound production-wise, but I do think it works fantastically. It creates the production sound that they want while still allowing the instrument to shine through. The instrument itself, the characteristics of the body and the tone and the string style and all of it. Like, you choose your instrument for a reason. And in the case of acoustic instruments, you really want that to shine through in the mix. And so we have that. We also have a bass that kind of sits at the bottom of the song and just fills out space. It doesn't really do a lot. Actually, speaking about doing things, the guitar that I just described mostly plays chords. Then we have the drums for a majority of this track. It's just quarter notes on probably a closed hi-hat and snare on 4, was it? And a couple of syncopated bass kicks leading into that 4th beat. Just to create a little bit of energy into that snare hit. The snare has quite a bit of compression on it. I really like the sound of it. I like the action of that snare. It works really well with this slightly fuzzy but not overly electric sound. The vocals cut through this, as I mentioned during the reaction, kind of slurry. The pitches just sort of move into one another. There aren't distinct points where the pitch changes. This is a very legato style of delivery where staccato is sharper, has more points where things abruptly stop. Legato is more fluid. We get a lot of that in here. It's also a very small range that the notes are in for the vocalist. Doesn't really deviate too far. I think at most we're looking at 4 or 5 pitches within a tight range. It's very focused, and the movement between it, like I said, it's kind of slurry in a way that it just feels very colloquial. It almost borders on sing-songy if I think the song are a bit slower. It's all very down to earth, very grounded. I tried to figure out the word to describe this. The word apathetic came to mind originally, and while I think there is a distancing of some of the lines from an emotionality. I don't necessarily think apathy is necessarily the right word, maybe just a sense of neutrality to it all. But it also feels kind of hazy. It feels very, I don't know, sepia, auburn. It has a warm feeling to it while feeling a bit older. And I think a lot of that comes down to the levels of compression on it. Because this was like '03 is what I said, right? Yeah. So they're definitely, I think, specifically creating some of the extra crackle and white noise on this. And even that, I completely forgot about this. There's another guitar, electric, I think, just humming away in the background through a lot of this song, too. Just creating this drone of feedback, of white noise. It ends up feeling very much of a, not a longing, pensiveness might be the word, just deep in thought, I think, is the way this is. It's not positive, but it's not negative, and I think that's where that neutrality comes in, but that doesn't mean that it isn't aiming to say something. Deep in thought probably works well for this. Now, we do have expansions on ideas here. The guitars introduce a couple of new things here and there. We eventually have a guitar off to the left that brings in some extra harmony. We have a guitar that sits in the middle at times, a little bit more bite. I'm pretty sure this is an electric guitar. Sometimes it provides us little melodic licks, other times it's more harmony, sometimes it layers up that feedback drone going on in the background. Its role kind of changes throughout. There is even one time when it played the same melody as the vocal line, giving us texture layering there. I think they were the same exact pitch, so not technically harmony there, just introducing a new timbre or texture to that melodic line. It is, generally speaking, on the simpler side, though. A lot of chords, a lot of production stuff, and a little bit of melody. We have one big change in the chorus. I'm not sure the exact phrasing of this, but there is a moment in the chorus when we just hang on to a specific chord, not one of rest either. We're not talking about a home chord, we're not talking about a root chord or a leading chord, it's just tension. It wants to find resolution and they don't allow it. And with all the chords being equally long throughout the entirety of the intro and the first verse, having this one chord extend, I think we should have heard 4 or 5 chords in the time that we hear this one just being held out. It really draws a lot of attention to it. It creates a feeling of hanging on the edge. Of teetering into something but not quite falling yet. I'm curious what goes on there in the lyrics. With my analogy of being deep in thoughts, this could be a sort of spiral. Although I would typically associate that with more anxiety in the music, even downward falling melody lines, do 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 do, some sort of falling down with tenser ideas in that. Um, but instead, it's just a hanging on to this. So maybe not a spiral, but a hyperfixation on something. Maybe a hyperfixation on something negative. I don't know. That chorus does stand out to me, though, because of that moment. There really isn't anything else in here that really differentiates itself too much from the verse. It bleeds together for me, except this part. And we hear it a second time. Yeah. Yeah, we hear it a second time. So that's why I call it the chorus, I think. It's the only thing that really stands out to me as a landmark, and it is repeated. like I said, makes me wonder what's going on thematically. The lyrics will be able to provide a little bit of context to that, hopefully. But the rest of the song is lost in thought, except that moment. Let me get to the bridge, though. This is where we break and start to explore some new things. We lead into the bridge with some new instrumentation. We have the bells come in, and what was the other bright instrument? Oh, yeah, the plucked string, probably some sort of dulcimer, maybe a harp now that I'm thinking about it, although I'm pretty far away from that moment now. What was that, like 15 minutes ago? I might be changing the way that it sounds in my mind now. Some sort of plucked string, though. Very bright and vibrant, both of these instruments are. They act as, like I mentioned, a twinkling element. If everything feels very grounded and rooted, very warm, these are sharper. They cut through and pierce through the sound of the song. They present very bright, light sounds. As I mentioned, if the rest of the song was some sort of, I think I used the word desert, but just some sort of empty landscape that just is. Nothing really of import to it, nothing that catches your eye. Definitely not talking about like the Las Vegas Strip with LED lights everywhere. uh, talking about just a field, maybe. Nothing of interest that really catches your eye that's any different than anything else out there. Just something very comfortable, warm, and grounded. These are the stars that sit above that landscape. They twinkle and shimmer, and sometimes one star will catch your eye. It just starts to flash out a little bit more than the other stars, and you immediately look over to it. Hey, what was that movement over there? That's what this feels like. Little ornamental, bright lights being played every once in a while. It's gorgeous. I really love the difference here. The colder sharpness of these tones, the higher pitch of them, all acting as sharp contrast to everything that we've been listening to up until this point. It creates a sense of hopefulness, seems like the wrong word, but a positive feeling for the future is what I got out of it. I mentioned betterment, some sort of making tomorrow brighter than today kind of vibe. That's what I get out of this. And eventually we even grow this with another guitar line, working with these chunks of three notes, da 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 da, and having this melody written in these chunks where each grouping of three notes is the same pitch, and we're moving almost like quarter notes through this. It's a beautiful line that I think works well with the ornamental sounds all around. This guitar also is a bit brighter. It's higher in pitch too. It matches some of the characteristics of the twinkling instruments, but also feels very warm like the rest of the instrumentation. It sits in the middle, trying to marry the two sides, and I think it does so very well. It's that bridge between the two that makes it not feel like two separate worlds, but one that you can move between, a literal bridge. This builds for a while. I think that this guitar part actually gets longer and longer, originally taking up just one or two bars, and by the end of it taking up a majority of the phrase, only having a few bars left where it isn't present. All of it building into nothing. The drums come in heavy here. We have a lot of snare presence, some very articulate accent points, rising in volume of all the instruments, all the layers coming to a head, and then we start over. The guitar introduces the next section. We have a new chord progression. The drums come in more energetic and bright than ever, bouncier even. We have some of the other the brighter instrumentation coming in as well, but also more of the guitars, distorted and acoustic, join in. And eventually we have another lead guitar line, this time working in pockets of 4 notes, kind of copying that same idea from previously, but exploring it just a little bit different, following very bright and positive melodies out of it. This whole section feels like a culmination of everything else we explored, but with a slight tweak, a slight perspective change on it. What if all of that without the neutrality? What if all of that but ready for the future? Of a strong step forward, ready to see what happens next. That's what the end of the song feels like to me. The final 3 minutes is a new form of confidence, a positive feeling about what's around the corner. Except that's not how the song goes. The true ending of the track, the final 40 seconds or so, is the song falling apart, instruments falling out of time with each other. Harmony begins to lose its strength. A couple of dissonant notes here and there, but otherwise just sort of like all the instruments are playing their own thing. Rhythmically it falls apart. And then we just have this one lick, this one riff on the guitar. We get halfway through it and the song ends. Whatever positivity we felt, whatever sort of readiness that the song decides to lean into, it gets abruptly cut short. It felt confident, and yet it still falters by the end. Not sure what that's supposed to represent. It feels like we start kind of neutral with a little bit of like low feeling to it, and we rise up, everything's better now, and then we still end low. It's an interesting turn. I think we have to hit the lyrics here. That's pretty much all I can get out of the music. It's very emotionally, atmospherically focused. It does a great job of starting rather neutral, finding some fantastic heights, and then watching it all unravel in the very last moment. It could represent a few things. It's kind of a vague idea of rising and falling, but let's see what the authorial intent is. Hopefully the lyrics don't go over my head. That would upset me a little bit. Maybe we can see what the author is trying to say with this track. Alright, this song, it has themes of grief and pain strewn throughout it. Interestingly, there's 3 verses and 3 choruses, though I only ever remember 2. Each chorus is a response to the verse, which I think is interesting. Usually choruses retain similar, or the same, usually, lyrics. Here they don't. The first verse talks about waking up from a dream where a typhoon was coming in, and he said it made the world look gray and alone, taking all the light from my view, keeping everyone in, and keeping me in here with you. So there's this massive disaster on the horizon. Well, silver lining here is that everyone has to stay inside their homes, and that means I get to spend more time with you, some other person I'm going to assume that our narrator is close to. And so the chorus 1 is a response to this situation. It says, around you now, I can't sleep no more. Around you still, I don't want to leave yet. So just greatly enjoying the time he has with this person. Verse 2 talks about another dream. He says he was lost in a war and couldn't feel his feet or hands. He said, I knew there I would die alone with no one to reach to, but an angel came down and brought me back to you. So he had a dream where he thought he was going to die in a war on a battlefield around, not around his loved ones. And in this dream, he was miraculously brought back, maybe even survived, and brought back to the you again, who I'm going to assume is I don't know. He's someone he's in a relationship with, I suppose. Chorus 2 says, I'd rather leave this world forever than let life go the way it's going. I see this as a response to verse 2 in that he sees a time coming where maybe he will have to be separated from this other person. Maybe they break up, maybe there's a death, and he'd rather leave the world than deal with that pain. Verse 3 talks about an old fight that he watched between Ray Mancini and Duk Koo Kim. This was an actual boxing fight from the early 1980s. It says that the boy from Seoul was hanging on good, but the poundin' took to him, and there in the square he laid down without face, without crown, and the angel who looked upon him, she never came down. So in this battle, though, Duk Koo Kim was eventually, at the end of the fight, taken away on a stretcher, and a few days later, he died. He didn't recover from the injuries of this boxing fight. And so the idea here, I think, is that in verse 2, he had a dream where an angel came down and rescued him. Here, in verse 3, an angel looks upon this boxer and chooses not to rescue him. The chorus, as a response, says, you never know what day is going to pick you out of the air, out of nowhere. Basically saying you never know what day you're going to die. Anything can happen, anytime. Life can be fragile like that. The refrain says, come to me once more, my love. Show me love I've never known. Sing to me once more, my love, words from your younger years. As far as I can see it, this is just about, trying to live in the moment. Let's spend more time together. Let's talk more together right now. The outro says, birds gather round my window, fly with everything I love about the day. Flowers, blue and gold and orange, rise with everything I love about the day. Walk with me down these strange streets. How have we come to be here? So kind are all these people. How have we come to know them? The idea that there's a lot of beauty in life. It just kind of happens. You end up living. Hopefully you live in a nice area and you spend your time there. You meet people. There's flowers, there's birds, there's beauty around you, people you can talk to. It says, how has all this come to be? Everything I love about the day is right here around me. I think it's just about seeing the beauty in everyday life, appreciating it for what it is each day that you have. It's getting through grief of loss. It's understanding the fragility of life, but also the beauty of life, of ensuring that you take every moment that you're alive with grace. Finding the beauty in it, finding the joy in living, because you might not be able to do that tomorrow. I think that's beautiful. I suppose, then, that the end of the song, the abrupt ending, is just a representation of how life can end at any moment, even mid-phrase, mid-idea, mid-thought. It's interesting to end the track that way, especially given that I really didn't find too much of a grief element to it. I'd say that most of the song, to me, musically feels like sitting in the past, being very thoughtful and pensive. This song seems to be about living in the moment. The only time I really hit that point is towards the end, which is where the outro comes. And he's like, hey, there's birds everywhere, there's flowers. I love talking to these people. This is excellent. This is great. That, I think, absolutely fits the positivity I find in the music. I'm curious if anybody else feels anything melancholic or grief adjacent in the rest of the song, though, that would line up with some of these verses about feeling disaster on the horizon and feeling alone and realizing that you can go at any time. Those feelings and realizations I didn't really catch much of in the music. But these are just my thoughts on KIL Moon's Duk Koo Kim. Let me know what you thought of it. If you enjoyed this, if there's anything you'd like to add on to the conversation or correct me on, if I made any mistakes or misspoke, any sort of other interpretations or opinions or perspectives you have on this, please put all of that in the description, in the comment section, alongside any other thoughts you have about the song. In the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That does not wrap it up for today. We do have some brand new music coming up next that we're going to check out. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to check out a full album. Sunday, we have the live stream at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UTC. And if you can't catch any of that, I'll be back Monday. We're going to continue on with this Singers Week. I believe we're going to check out 2 songs from Genesis on Monday. I think it's Genesis. It's definitely a classic prog band. I think it's Genesis, though. That sounds interesting, though. 5 p.m. that day. You don't want to be there. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.